Welcome back, guys. It is a new year and we've got lots of stuff in store for it. I'm really excited for 2022. You guys were amazingly supportive in 2021, my first year of doing this YouTube stuff, and I think this year will be even better. The main goal for this year is going to be to knock out this 308 build. You guys have been super patient, but excitedly supportive in wanting to see new episodes, and while I'm still waiting on a bunch of important parts so that we can make big time progress, my headspace is finally in a place to get back into the project, even if we're just going to be crossing small, annoying stuff off the list. So next week, we're going to see what we can do on the 308 and see if we can make some more progress. But today, we're going to dive into the Model A and start repairing it from this accident. I showed you guys the damage in a previous episode, and now we need to tear it apart. I want to get this thing back on the road. I want to get it done. It's so close. And once we finish a project, either the Model A or the E36, both of them are pretty close to being roadworthy, then I'll feel good about introducing the new project that's hiding behind me under the cover. So let's dive into the Model A and make some progress today. In the last Model A episode, we took a brief look at the damage to the Model A following the accident I had where the steering came apart. And on the surface, most of this damage looks rather superficial and relatively easy to repair. But the only way to know for sure is to get this thing up in the air and really take a close look at it. At this point, I was still under the impression that the frame was in good shape, so I spent a bit of time trying to straighten out other aspects of the car, like the front grille, which was tweaked in one direction. I tried a few different methods in order to straighten this out, including using a large clamp as a sort of pipe wrench, but that didn't have much of an effect, so I turned towards a jack and a block of aluminum and used the weight of the car in my favor. Unfortunately, this didn't really work either, so I decided it was probably time to actually disassemble the front end and really dive in. Only 4 bolts hold on the grille slats, which I still think should be relatively easily fixed. Just a little bit of straightening with some pliers and maybe the press. I drained the water from the front intercooler, which remains uncracked and still held the fluid just fine with no damaged fins, removed it, and then removed that grille shell support with the lights. With the wheels in the air and the ability to spin them, it became pretty clear that the driver's side front wheel is quite bent. It's nowhere close to round anymore. I don't know if it can be repaired, but we'll find out, and worst case, we'll have to replace it. Everything underneath looks pretty good though, although I do plan on taking our center lock adapter and putting it in the lathe along with an indicator to make sure it's still true and round. Because the exhaust crosses over under the chassis, it's in the way of taking some accurate measurements to find out what state the chassis is actually in. But with it gone, we've got enough clearance to take measurements, so I spent quite a bit of time making sure the chassis was completely level and square, and then I got out the straight edge and tried to figure out exactly how far out the front end might actually be. It's probably pretty obvious looking at it at this point, but the measurements confirmed everything I was beginning to suspect. I wanted to pull the rest of the suspension components off to get a really good look at the rails themselves before making any final decisions. Although everything appeared good on the passenger side of the Model A, when I was taking everything apart, it became clear that the lower control arm was mildly bent from the accident, which means at this point all 4 control arms will need to be rebuilt, no matter what. So with everything apart on this side, we can get a better idea of what the damage really is. We knew that these mounts were tweaked. They're pushed over pretty good. That's where the load for the upper control arm went. So one option would be to kind of cut these off and replace just the upper portion of this. Maybe have some bracing that runs to the top of the frame rail, just to add some support. The underside, though, is admittedly somewhat tweaked. It does appear that this whole structure is a little bit bent. Yeah, you can see the bend in it there. So this is definitely damaged. and then this is very clearly damaged too. So I think a lot of my plans for just kind of patching the ends of this have kind of gone out the window. This will be a bigger repair job. And then we've got some tweak here that was hidden by the coilover. So we could maybe straighten this out, but it also would be probably easier just to cut it off and put a new one on there. So all in all, a decent bit of damage to this thing, but honestly, the real damage reveals itself at the front. With everything pulled off of the front end, it's pretty clear at this point that the chassis is absolutely tweaked, just not in the direction I was initially thinking that it might be. Both frame rails are still totally straight, but the driver's side is pitched up about 1 inch over the passenger side. And this makes a lot of sense considering it was a head-on collision. I guess I should have expected this from the get-go. So the chassis is bent. How do we fix it? Well, obviously we have some suspension mounts that we need to repair and modify in order to get some structural integrity back and to fix the damage. But there is the whole chassis itself being out of place. Now, it's really only something like a degree of bend at the cab in order to throw it this far out. We could heat it up and bring it back down, or we could put this thing on a chassis table and fix this, but honestly, that solution will bug me forever. I will know that it's not really correct. And the more I look at it, the more I realize this is a slight blessing in disguise because I can fix one problem with the front suspension. Let me show you the bump steer. So let me try to explain the steering conundrum on this side. This entire independent front suspension is something that I designed, and it's my first attempt at doing so, and honestly it worked out reasonably well. I got kind of all of the control arm mounting points in the right places, and the travel and geometry seems to work pretty well. The only thing I messed up on is that this tie rod here is angled forward. If we stand above it, you'll see, if we straighten out the hub, you'll see that this travels forward towards the front of the car out here where it's attached to the knuckle. And the problem is that this is introducing a lot of bump steer. This needs to be straight, and then it also needs to be, the pivot on the inside needs to be located directly between this pivot and this pivot, which it is. That part of the design works well. It's just a fore and aft angle problem for this guy right here. And in the past, I've thought about potentially trying to solve this by moving this point inward here, but it would drastically shorten kind of the steering ratio. It'd make it a lot harder to turn and introduce other problems, so I'm not so sure that that's really the best plan. If we're gonna design things from scratch again, honestly, I'll keep everything the same, except for I'm gonna move the rack itself forward to about this point here where this is, and we'll take this entire front member and move it closer to the front of the frame. So it'll actually make the control arms a bit wider. We're gonna keep all these points in the same place so we don't actually extend the wheelbase, but it should solve our bump steer issue and make this entire thing a lot easier to drive, safer to drive, and just better overall. Now the only way to really solve that bump steer issue is to move the steering rack forward. And in order to do that, I'd have to cut the front crossmember out of this thing and do a lot of redesigning. If I'm gonna cut the front crossmember out of this thing, the rear crossmember is damaged on the driver's side, and the frame is tweaked, I might as well just cut the entire chassis off at the firewall where it is originally joined. There is a weld there, and redesign the whole front. That sounds like a huge project. It's really not that bad. I'm gonna go on and hop on the computer and design what we're gonna put or what we're gonna do with the front of this thing. We can send out those drawings to get some plates cut, either through plasma or water jet or one of those. And then I'm gonna go get some chassis material. We can go on and build all of this stuff on my weld table, get the entire thing square and ready to go, and then just reattach it to the front of the truck. And I'm even probably gonna try to do this without pulling the engine out, because I actually wanna keep that located where it is and not have to redesign engine mounts, and I think it'll save me some effort. Somebody might criticize that, but I think it's gonna be the easy way to pull this off, and I don't think it'll negatively affect anything. So let's design a new front end. While I didn't design the chassis for the Model A in CAD, I did design the front suspension, which means I still have the DXF file that we need to base everything off of. So from here, I simply went through the process in Fusion 360 of drawing everything up based on the measurements I took off of the frame and some of the old notes I still had from when I built this truck back in 2018. I drew everything as it currently exists on the Model A before the accident, and then I made all of my changes to make sure that I was accurately accounting for everything that I want to do. Fast forward an hour or two of work, and you have something that looks a little bit like this. The model and all of the drawings that went into designing it. It's a little bit easier to understand when we take away all of the blueprint sketches, and ultimately this is what we want to build. It serves the same function of what we had before, but with a few key changes. The upper control arm mounts are going to stay exactly where they are. The geometry will be identical to what we had before. The lower control arm mounts, though, are going to move forward, and that's because we need to get room for that steering rack to move forward 2 inches. We don't have a cross brace between the front mounts anymore, though, because we do have to clear the front intercooler and the headlights. There's nowhere else for those to go. I do feel confident, though, in the diagonal bracing, and I think the front end of this should be just as strong as it was before. All right, so it's the next morning. We've got a chassis designed. I feel like I'm in a place to cut this thing apart. I hope. So let's get some last things organized, pull a few more things off this thing, and get out the Sawzall. Now, as mentioned, I'd like to do this without removing the engine, although if I have to, I will. But for now, I'm going to try to support it with the gantry, so we need to remove the headers in order to get access to the engine mount arms so that we can support it. I gave the header a once-over once I removed it, and obviously we do have the one dent I mentioned previously, but it also seems that the flange is a bit distorted, so I'll have to figure out how we're going to straighten that out further down the line. Supporting the engine with the gantry isn't absolutely perfect, but it really doesn't need to be. With the engine hung, that brings us to the fun part, the point of no return, cutting the chassis apart with a reciprocating saw. The lack of weight in the front caused the body of the Model A to shift, so I will have to go back and re-level and square everything before we can reattach the front end. But for now, we're making good progress. We've got the front of the chassis removed and free from the car. It's a bit alarming to see this sitting on the floor instead of attached to the Model A, but it does feel good knowing that this is going to be the correct way to solve this problem. There is still some material attached to the chassis that we're going to have to remove. I cut it where I did to make this easy, and I'll have to go back in and cut these off flush with the crossmember so that we have a good surface to reattach the new front end once we build it. I'll have to work around some fish plates that'll be all but impossible to remove, but overall, I think I've got a good plan in order. All right, so front end's cut off. I'm panicking a little bit inside. Big decision, but honestly, I feel like it's the right one. I feel like this is the right way to go about it. The silver lining here is I can improve the one aspect of the truck I really was unhappy with while we're fixing these safety things. So in the end, I think this is gonna be worth it. I really don't think it'll take that long to pull off. We've just gotta power through it. I'm hopeful if we can get all of our laser or water jet parts before the end of the week, that by next week we can have this thing all at least tacked back up and put together, because since it's all CAD drawn, it really shouldn't be too big of a deal. We'll see. I don't know. I've been wrong most of the time. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you as always for the support. Don't forget to like, subscribe, that kind of stuff helps me out, and I'll catch you guys on Friday for the next episode.